Mildred Washington, a name that carried whispers of history, lived in a quiet neighborhood in Topeka, Kansas. Her home, a small white house with faded shutters, sat amid a garden she tended daily. At 90 years old, Mildred had earned a peaceful life, though her past spoke of anything but tranquility. She was a veteran, one of the few black women who had served as a nurse during World War II. Her stories, rich with history, were rarely shared beyond her close-knit circle of neighbors and friends. Life on her street moved at a gentle pace. Mornings were filled with the laughter of children riding bicycles and the chirping of birds in the maple trees. For Mildred, mornings were her sanctuary. She would sit on her front porch with a steaming cup of tea, watching the world unfold around her. But one Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. A deep, guttural roar shattered the calm. The sound came from a line of motorcycles rumbling down the street, disrupting the serenity Mildred cherished. The bikers were young, loud, and clad in black leather, a stark contrast to the peaceful neighborhood. They stopped abruptly near her house, parking their bikes along the sidewalk. Engines sputtered before dying, leaving a moment of silence, then came the laughter. Boisterous, mocking, and intentionally loud. The leader, a tall man with a red bandana, noticed Mildred watching from her porch. He smirked and nudged his companions. "Look at the granny over there. Bet she's got stories about the dinosaurs," he sneered. His group erupted into laughter. Mildred didn't flinch. Her sharp brown eyes studied them with quiet resolve. Without a word, she rose from her chair, gripped the armrest for support, and walked inside, closing the door softly behind her. The bikers saw this as an invitation to escalate. Music blared from a speaker strapped to one of their bikes, the jarring noise disrupting the neighborhood. They hollered and laughed, their voices carrying across the street, disturbing neighbors who peeked cautiously from behind their curtains but dared not intervene. For Mildred, this wasn't just noise, it was a challenge. She had faced much louder and more terrifying adversaries in her lifetime. War, prejudice, and the hardships of being a black woman in the military had toughened her spirit. She wasn't easily rattled. That evening, Mildred stepped onto her porch again, broom in hand, sweeping the wooden planks as though the loud music and jeers were nothing more than an annoying breeze. "Hey, Grandma, don't hurt yourself with that broom," one of them shouted, earning more laughter. Mildred paused, looking directly at them. Her steady gaze was unyielding, and for a brief moment, the laughter faltered. Without a word, she returned inside. But silence wouldn't be enough. These men were pushing boundaries, and Mildred could feel the tension growing. She glanced at her old rotary phone, her fingers brushing its cool surface. It had been years since she had dialed the number she was now considering. Her eyes fell on a faded photograph on the wall, her standing tall in her army uniform, surrounded by comrades whose loyalty had been forged in the fire of war. She let out a slow, measured breath. She knew exactly what she needed to do. But the timing had to be right. The next day, the bikers returned, louder and brasher. Their engines roared as they parked in front of Mildred's house again. They threw empty beer cans onto her lawn, laughing as they watched her pick them up, piece by piece. She did so methodically, placing them into a trash bag before returning to her seat, but inside, she was cataloging every insult, every jeer. By the third day, they had set up a makeshift camp on the sidewalk, treating the area as their personal playground. Mildred's once pristine lawn was now littered with garbage. The leader's taunts grew crueler. "Maybe you don't mind the mess, huh? Figured an old lady like you wouldn't care. Probably can't even see straight anymore." One of the younger bikers hesitated, his gaze flickering toward Mildred with a trace of discomfort. "Maybe we're going too far," he muttered. But the leader waved him off. "What's she gonna do? Call the cops?" "Please." Mildred didn't call the police. She knew better. Some battles required a more strategic approach. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mildred stepped onto her porch with a determined expression. She held her old rotary phone in one hand and a notebook in the other, its pages filled with names and numbers she hadn't looked at in decades. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what she was about to do. She dialed a number she hadn't called in over 40 years. The phone rang once. Twice. 3 times. "Mildred? Is that really you?" The voice on the other end was gruff but warm. "It's me, Arthur," she said steadily. "I need a favor." Arthur Washington, her younger brother and a retired Army Ranger, listened intently. He didn't interrupt, but Mildred could hear the tension in his silence. "Say no more," Arthur finally said. "I'll handle it." Mildred hung up, returned to her chair, and waited. The bikers laughed in the distance, oblivious to the storm brewing just out of sight. The next evening, 2 SUVs rolled down the street, their engines humming with authority. They came to a stop across from Mildred's house. Doors opened in unison, and out stepped 4 men, older, disciplined, wearing black jackets with an insignia stitched onto the chest. Army Rangers. Arthur emerged first, his silver-streaked beard giving him a commanding presence. Behind him stood 3 of his closest brothers in arms. The bikers froze. Arthur's gaze locked onto the leader. "You must be the one bothering my sister," he said, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Sister?" the leader echoed, glancing nervously at Mildred. Arthur stepped closer. "Let me tell you what fun looks like to me. Fun is respecting people who've earned it. Fun is knowing when to back off before you bite off more than you can chew." Before the leader could respond, another car pulled up. Martha Jenkins stepped out, sharp as ever, her presence as commanding as Arthur's. "You picked the wrong woman to mess with," she said coolly. "Do you even know who she is? She served this country when people like you wouldn't lift a finger." Arthur gestured toward the motorcycles. "Pick up your trash. Get on your bikes. Leave. If you're smart, you won't come back." The leader hesitated, then reluctantly signaled to his crew. They gathered their trash, their swagger gone. As they rode off, the younger biker lingered. He approached the porch hesitantly. "I didn't mean for things to get this bad," he muttered. "I didn't know who you were." Mildred studied him. "It's not about who I am. It's about how you treat people, no matter who they are." The young man nodded, shame written on his face. "I'll do better." As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of gold and orange, Mildred leaned back in her chair. The street was hers again. Not through violence, but through steadfast resolve and the strength of those who stood by her side. Arthur sat beside her, smiling. "You know you didn't have to handle this alone." Mildred smirked. "And deny you the chance to play the hero? Where's the fun in that?"